am Bishop.
And I'm Dr. Steph.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this YouTube channel. We appreciate you so much every single week being a part of this community we call our life, our journey,
our truth.
And we are so excited. So many of you comment and you like and you share. Make sure you
subscribe.
That's why we stay connected and we can be family. So we thank you so much in advance for being a part. And make sure you follow my wife, Dr. Steph Walker, on Instagram. Follow me at Joseph Walker 3. We would love to connect with you. And also make sure if you want to get our books, get our merch, we've got some cool merch out there now, Connection Series. Go out there literally at josephwalker3.org and go to the bookstore and just have at it. I promise you, it will be a blessing to your life. We're excited about this episode because I think it's going to touch a lot of people. The title you saw, From Tragedy to Triumph, is really how do we move on after a tragedy, after we have lost someone dear in our lives, and how do you continue to go on with your life? And I think it's important to have this conversation because we've lived it. You've lived it. I've lived it.
And we know a lot of people who have lived it, and we've gotten a lot of questions about it as a result too.
And I think that what's important is, at the very beginning of this conversation, is to acknowledge that what you feel, what occurred, is totally normal. What you feel is real. And you don't
grief is real.
You don't have to be in denial about that. Tragedy occurs. Suddenness of life ending is something that will impact people in a variety of ways.
And even if it's not sudden, even if it's expected, that moment of transition impacts you in a way that no one is really prepared for.
Tell that story then, for you. Set it up. I'll tell mine, and we'll talk about how we get moving forward.
So for me, some of you know, some of you don't, but I lost my oldest sister, who's 13 years older than me, and she was an older sister, but she also was a surrogate mom because of our age difference, and she died, I wouldn't say suddenly, but fairly sudden as a result of having a lupus flare. So she had lupus, and she had an inflammation episode, and she ended up having an aneurysm. And I was called in the middle of the night by her then 12-year-old daughter saying, "Hey, did you hear what happened to my mom?" And I was like, "No, what happened?" She was like, she woke up with the worst headache of her life, screaming about her head, and I was rushed to the emergency room by ambulance. And so, of course, when I heard that, I knew exactly what it was as a young physician in training, hopped on an airplane, flew to LA, and she was, when I got there, she had a breathing tube in, and she knew that I was there. She could hear me, and we were communicating with our hands or what have you. And then they were able to take the breathing tube out, and she was awake. And so we thought that we were just preparing for recovery and rehab. Little did we know that a week later she passed away because she had multiple additional aneurysms, and she ended up passing away on Mother's Day, and she left behind 3 beautiful, amazing young girls who are now in their 20s and 30s, but I have never been the same. And before I get there, I'll let you tell your story, and then we can transition to say how we recovered from episodes.
I was married 11 years. When I got the news that my wife at that time had a rare form of pancreatic cancer, neuroendocrine pancreatic cancer, after going in for a biopsy, complaining about stomach issues, and watching her deteriorate before my eyes, battling this cancer, slow-growing cancer in pancreatic terms. And over the next 3.5, 4 years, watching, her go through, chemotherapy and succumbing to this just terrible disease, it really changed me forever. A lot of questions I had for God, a lot of stuff I wrestled with my own self, my own prayer life, my own spirituality. And so it was a very devastating moment. She passed at 37 years old, and we were the same age. And it was just something I will just forever, remember.
And my sister passed away, and she was 40.
That's something, So I guess the question that people are watching want to know is, well, then how did you go on? How did you move on?
Well, I think the reality is, for a long time, I didn't, right? I thought I was moving on, but I wasn't. I found myself in survival mode. Really, I moved back. I cut my residency. I put my residency on pause and I flew back to LA and I lived there for about 3 or 4 months, trying to sort of take care of the children, trying to just put things in order and trying to make sense out of it all. Like, this is not something that was ever expected, right? Someone that was just ripped suddenly from your life. And I was again in survival mode, trying to put everyone else's life, my parents, my mom, everyone's life together. And then when I got back to Philadelphia, which is where I was living at the time, 4 months later, I hit a wall and I realized I had never actually given myself an opportunity to grieve.
Yeah.
And so literally, sort of walking through this process of grief, depression, like asking why. Like, I remember I couldn't even go into a church building because when I went to church, all I heard was wah, 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 like that Charlie Brown, because I couldn't understand how someone who was an amazing person, who was healthy otherwise, and who had a beautiful life ahead of her could be snatched from the earth so quickly and so suddenly. And again, like we said, you're wrestling with your own sort of relationship with God, your own sort of questions, your own Christianity, your whole concept of the Bible and heaven and hell and all these concepts. It was difficult, to say the least. Like, I felt like I was a walking zombie, like just walking through the world where everyone was continuing on with their lives, but I was in this tunnel and I could not get out of it. And then one day, I woke up from, a deep slumber, right? And God spoke very clearly to me. He basically said, you feel like I took her away from you too early. But then he reminded me of a car accident she had been in. Again, she passed away when she was 40, that she was in her early 20s. And I was in the front seat along with my next sister in age, and we were fighting over the passenger seat. And back in the day, you didn't even have to wear a seatbelt. So we were both in the passenger seat, and I think I was like 8. My other sister was like 9. And so she was driving, and she dropped us off at school. She turned the corner, and she got hit by a car and got blindsided by a car who actually ran the red light. And she was thrown from the car. And the car was total. Like, where she was sitting, there was no seat. There was no space in the car. And so she should have died. And she walked away with just mere scratches. She was in the hospital for a few days, no broken bones, just scratches and glass all over her. And she ended up having to heal from just stitches, right? So that was a blessing in of itself. And what God reminded me in that moment is, no, like, I didn't take her early. I gave you 20 more years with her.
Wow.
And that changed my perspective. Another thing that changed my perspective was at her funeral, even though she was like this young person, all these people started coming up and speaking about how she impacted their lives. And when you looked out over the crowd, it was standing room only. There were people that were out on the street, on the sidewalks, trying to get in but couldn't. And I realized it's not just about you living for your goals or your dreams or your aspirations, but how do you impact people's lives? And that completely transformed how I live even to this day. My thing is, it's not about, oh yeah, I'm a doctor, yeah, I'm a pastor's wife, yeah, I'm this, that, and another. But how are we transforming the lives of people around us? What are they going to say about you when you pass away? What are they going to say about you in terms of what your impact has been on the world? And because of that, because of her, I live my life as such.
And that's powerful. I mean, that's just reflective. It helps you understand the intentionality of the journey. And for me, it was really coming to a place where I realized I couldn't do it by myself.
Yeah.
I had to own the grief and realize the scripture I've been preaching for so many years. Yea, though I walk through the valley, and God was like, yeah, that's it. You do not run, you walk.
Walk. Oh my goodness.
You get
walk.
support
Yes.
through that system. You walk
Yes.
through that together. And,
Yeah.
and I was able to do that. And as a consequence of walking through that valley of the shadow of death,
you got help. You
I
went
did.
to Gilda's Club.
I went to Gilda's Club.
Yeah.
I got help. I surrounded myself with folks who had similar losses, and it really helped
Yeah.
me. And it helped me take who she was in my life
Yeah.
and place her in a special place.
Yeah.
And that's where she will forever live.
Yeah.
And I knew it was important for me
Yeah.
to move on because I
Yeah.
know what her life was about. She was full of life and would
Yeah.
have wanted me to move on.
And to live.
And one of the things that, you know this, and I've shared it with you,
Yeah.
that when I was single, I remember very clearly that it's like she came to me and said, now you can move on.
Yeah.
It's because she knew her heart. She didn't know her in this world.
Yeah.
But she, I know as my guardian angel, was making certain that I was going to be protected. Maybe she was like, ain't nobody else crazy enough like me but you, girl, to deal with him. I don't know what it was, but what is an absolute fact
Yeah.
is that there was a release
Yeah.
to move forward.
Yeah.
And that's how I was able to do it.
Yeah. And I like what you said about guardian angel, because I too felt like I had a guardian angel. And I know people probably say this to you if you're dealing with grief or the loss of a loved one. People have possibly told you, well, no, they might not be here, but they're up there watching out for you. And I truly, with all of my heart, believe that. I know that I had been in situations and it just felt like she was speaking to me like I'm speaking to you.
Yeah.
And I looked up and I was avoiding negative situations because she was telling me and guiding me and showing me what to do in the moment. I know some people don't believe that. I believe that wholeheartedly. And I just feel like when you are so connected to someone, it's like they never leave you. They're transitioning, but they're not leaving.
Yeah.
I don't know if that
Yeah,
makes
no,
sense.
that's real good. I think that's important. So when you think about practical ways to move forward, tragedy occurred, but you can't stay there. And I think that's the first thing I want to say to you. You can't stay in that place of grief forever. You've got to walk through it, deal with it, but you've got to be willing to say, this is not what a loved one would have wanted me to do.
For you.
Not to be depressed, not to be in a place where I can't move on. I mean, you got to go through the stages, all that, but you can't live there. That's no life at all.
That's interesting because I didn't, when I returned back to my residency, which is like your training as a young doctor, I was like, I don't even know if I want to do this anymore. What's life about, right? And I remember saying the same thing, like, she would be rolling over in her grave right now if she knew that I was thinking or contemplating about not continuing on with my training, because she was one of the major people in my life that was a huge influence in terms of my mentality, my drive, my focus, right? And so I remember even at the funeral, I actually put my medical IDs and all that stuff into her casket. There's like a little basket, but that's probably too much information. But the bottom line is I dedicated the rest of my career, if not impact on the world, to her. And that was and still is the thing that drives me. And I think for everyone, for each person, you have to find whatever that thing is, that message from that person, whatever that thing is that you think that they would tell you, and allow that to be your precipice for sort of your jump off and for moving through your life. Because again, they've left you in the natural, but they're still with you. They're still watching you. They're still around. And so trying to figure out, like, how would they want me to proceed? How would they want me to move forward? And really trying to harness that energy to live your life out to the fullest.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I think that to be able to live your life in legacy.
Yeah.
Right? Living your life in legacy is huge.
Yeah.
That your life has greater purpose.
Yeah.
And that you're always going to remember that. Maybe you're watching this and maybe it was a parent and you're like, I lost my mom, I lost my dad, or I lost. And you have to think that when your life then reflects their legacy, you achieving everything they put inside of you. And one of the things that one of my mentors told me when my mom passed, and you remember this very well. She said to me, what your mother was unable to do
here on earth,
now without any limitations, she's able to do it from a different space now. You got an angel boy looking out for you. Doors are going to open, things are going to happen, and oh my. Can you imagine that? Like, wow, mama's love to me. Now she's able in a place without limitations, right? With the angels.
To petition on your behalf.
Petition on my behalf. I'm like, Lord Jesus, that just messed me up, right? And that makes me move on. I think that's important to know that moving on doesn't mean you're dishonoring anybody. You know?
And it also doesn't mean that it happens overnight.
Yeah.
Like, it took me at a minimum 8 years to be able to even tell the story of my sister's passing without crying. 8 years. And like, even now, like, before we started doing this, I had to get myself together, right? In order to sort of dig deep and be able to share. And so, I mean, it's been 20 years now, and it's still impactful, obviously. And it's not that the pain ever goes away. It doesn't ever go away. It's just it becomes more manageable. You learn how to compartmentalize.
Right.
You learn sort of where to put it. You learn how to harness it and almost sort of turn the pain on its head so that it doesn't paralyze your everyday movement and progress. But when you love someone, that love doesn't die or go away.
good.
It just is able to be put in a special place.
Yeah, yeah. So tragedy is going to come.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter who you are. All of us get a turn.
yeah,
And no exemptions from that.
yeah. Everybody gets a turn.
Everybody gets a turn. And I think that what you must understand doesn't mean you've done anything wrong when tragedy comes all the time. Not like, oh, God is punishing me. It's just life.
Part of life.
And it's about what tragedy reveals. It reveals what you're made of. Where's your faith, your fortitude, your resilience.
Or sometimes it helps you hone those things or
Yeah.
develop those skills if they're lacking.
The
Yeah.
need to go and get deeper and think about the things that we've gone through. We
Yeah.
could have literally gone off the edge, lost our mind had it not been for our faith, right?
Yeah.
Faith and family and friends, people that surrounding you in those moments. And I think the messaging in this today for you is you got so much more life to live.
Yeah.
You got so much more to conquer and do, and you can memorialize the passing of that person, and you can honor their legacy by achieving great things and moving forward and saying, you know, for the rest of my life, I got a guardian angel, and I am living my life to make certain that their life is forever
Yeah.
remembered.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge, huge thing, right?
And that's the triumph.
Yeah.
Triumph is in continuing to live in their honor.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. Tragedy happens, but you can move to triumph. So the Bible says, weeping endureth but a night, but joy comes in the morning.
Yeah.
There's a joy season, y'all, and that's what it's all about. And so you think about now, man, God is so faithful. He's a restorer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's a restorer. And whatever has happened in your life, please understand, God will give you double
For your trouble.
for your trouble. He's that kind of God. And so I think that ultimately has been the thing that has helped us move forward and
Yeah.
keep going on. And I think
Yeah.
that when you're determined to do that, you make up your mind that perhaps in the journey, I am constantly learning things about myself. I'm constantly realizing the impact of what that did to me. But what I refuse to do is to be paralyzed by my past,
Yeah.
right? To be hindered by my hurt. I want to go to a place where I can say, yes, I had tragedy, but look at the triumph that came on the other side, right?
Amen.
That's
I
what it's
love
all
it.
about. We're going forward,
Going forward.
boom. And you got to go forward too.
Yeah.
And that's why we wanted to have this episode a little different, but we thought it was necessary because we don't want you to be stuck. We're
Yeah.
praying for you,
Yeah.
praying for your family, but more importantly, we want you to know God's got your back.
God's got
He'll
you.
get you through it. Same God that brought us through, He'll get you through. Let's go from tragedy to triumph. I'm Bishop.
And I'm Dr. Steph.
Peace out.